My name is Jane Hilderman, and I'm the Executive Director of Samara Canada. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about infrastructure. I'm sure we've all heard that classic Canadian cliche that this country has not 4 seasons, but just 2, winter and construction. I bet you're all wondering, where is she going with this talk? I mention construction and infrastructure because one of the enduring legacies of the 1967 centennial year were the 2,000 arenas, stadiums, and cultural centers built across the country. Winnipeg, where we are right now, is a wonderful case in point. There's the Centennial Concert Hall, where you can hear the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. Toronto, where I reside now, also shares these 67 landmarks. The Ontario Science Centre, the St. Lawrence Centre for the Arts. And even my tiny hometown in rural Alberta has the Camrose and District Centennial Museum. In 1967, big ideas often meant big buildings. Today's sesquicentennial offers an opportunity to consider a different kind of big idea, a different kind of infrastructure for that the public life of our nation also needs. I'm talking about democratic infrastructure. By democratic infrastructure, I'm referring to the mix of laws and institutions, as well as the unwritten political norms and culture that allow us to work together as citizens to make decisions about our collective future. Democratic infrastructure is present and strong when Canadians talk about policy with greater understanding, and our elected leaders are truly two-way links between citizens and government. Democratic infrastructure is also working when citizens are politically engaged and feel invited and compelled to put their time into politics as a way to effect change. Democratic infrastructure is working when political leadership is seen to be responsive, transparent, and inclusive. Thinking about democracy as a form of infrastructure also reminds us that, like any physical building without regular maintenance, our democracy can face a metaphorical leaky roof that spells problems for the foundation. I want to illustrate over the next few minutes why this is a problem and why Canadians should care. I'll conclude with some potential renovations, if you will. On the world stage right now, there's plenty of evidence that over the past several months, we should have on our collective radars. The Economist Intelligence Unit, which has been producing an international democracy index for over a decade, now considers the world to be in the midst of what they call a democratic recession, where the number of full democracies is now in decline. Indeed, the US, traditionally one of the beacons of democratic leadership in the world, has been flagged recently as a flawed democracy for the very first time. It turns out that tipping point towards trouble can come faster than many expected. So what about us? What about Canada? Samara Canada, which is a national nonpartisan charity dedicated to reconnecting citizens to politics, has been investing in research over the past several years to illuminate precisely how well our democracy is doing. Specifically, Samara has focused on 3 elements: communication, participation, and leadership. Or in other words, how do Canadians talk, act, and lead? The results of this research reveal both strengths and weaknesses. There is a vibrancy to Canadians' political discussion. More than 2/3 of Canadians have reported that they've discussed politics in the past year, and typically face-to-face. A similar rate say that a political party, candidate, or MP has reached out to contact them in turn. How meaningful this outreach is, it's hard to gauge, but it is positive that we're sort of seeing hands reaching out to either side. Another bright light is the extraordinary jump in voter turnout in the federal election, up 7 percentage points in 2011, which is actually quite a lot. What is truly mind-blowing, however, is that that jump was driven primarily by the country's youngest voters, who are often discounted as a political force. This bump in voter turnout and discussion, however, has not translated into participation in other areas of our political life, where often a lot of influence can reside. Reported rates of party membership, of volunteering on a campaign, of attendance at political meetings are stagnant and, quite frankly, low. So in this respect, Canadian politics is just not as inclusive and participatory as it should be. So while our democracy may not be under quite the same severe strain as other countries have recently experienced, we cannot be too self-assured. We cannot be too proud or too complacent to believe that our existing democratic infrastructure, much of it dating back to Confederation itself, needn't be reinforced and renewed. We desire a better country. We desire a better country. This theme has been carefully chosen. It's not that we desired or that we will desire. The present tense implies action, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but today. My desire for a better Canada in 2017 is that we make a strategic investment in our democratic infrastructure. Let me share 4 ideas with you. First, let's begin by reinforcing our foundation. Too much of our civics education depends on getting it right before you graduate from high school. Civics needs to be lifelong and not just the purview of the formal classroom. The community should be the civics classroom. Second, public consultations should be an empowering invitation in the year 2017. Yet too often they underdeliver on their potential. Just as we should invest in education, so should we invest in the proper training and support to ensure that when citizens are asked for their input, it's well used and meaningful in order to build that virtuous cycle of engagement. Third, we need to think about the aesthetics of our democratic infrastructure in the form of greater civility. Our political leaders and parties can take some leadership by de-escalating, to put aside the jabs and the negative ads. We need new norms and rules that will restore respect to politics. Fourth and finally, we need to ensure that our democratic structures distribute that load rather than rely largely on just that one central pillar or just that one leader. We have better decision-making in the long run when many voices shape outcomes, especially if these voices bring forward different perspectives and identities. So just like our physical communities, building a better democracy takes a long-term vision with intentional investments and upkeep. And when it's done well, we'll have invested in the public life of our country in a way that is bigger than any one hockey rink or any one concert hall. Not least because that democratic infrastructure really and truly belongs to all of us. Together, let's make a stronger, more vibrant democracy our desire in 2017 and for the next 150 years in Canada. Thank you.